They tell you what to think. They decide what you should hear and what you shouldn't. Not here. The Western Standard does not bow, bend, or beg for approval. No spin, no handlers, no watered-down headlines. Just fearless Western journalism. If you believe the truth belongs to the public, not the powerful, then you belong with us. Join us at westernstandard.news.
Good day. Welcome to the CORY Morgan Show on this mid-November we're getting to. Still no snow on the ground in Calgary, not much in Saskatchewan. I'm thrilled with it. I know some people, oh boy, we got to worry about the drought and everything else. Yeah, I know we need it eventually, but we could put it off. I was thinking it should really dump in late January, maybe give a foot or two to really soak the ground, and then clear up in later February for when I'm driving back. But we take what we get with the weather. Global warming, as far as I'm concerned, bring it on. I'll start my little Morgan banana plantation out in the Prentice area and just adapt. We can't change it, so let's adapt. By the way, we got lots coming up. We got William Barclay. He's our new man on the ground in Ottawa, and I'm really looking forward to that conversation. He's already been putting great stuff out in the Western Standard. We've had a bit of a void over there for a little while. Now we have somebody there to cover that because we're a Western paper, but unfortunately, Ottawa impacts us, and we got to watch it and cover it. As well, news check-ins, rants, and all that good stuff. So I want to talk about a subject that's been big on the news. Credit given to Global for actually breaking this. It seems like Global, they break a few good things, but then they just kind of go downhill with other stuff. But yeah, it's that Cowichan garbage dump thing. And it makes me want to talk more on the broader issue. As long as Native bands are given unfettered authority on their land, but with no responsibility, those reserves are going to remain dysfunctional, poverty-ridden, racial enclaves of misery. The massive, unregulated garbage dump on the Cowichan Tribe Reserve next to a river is just the most recent example of this. So there's a Cowichan member, and he accumulated nearly 300,000 cubic meters of garbage on an illegal dumping spot. The mess is now leaching into the river, putting salmon stock and drinking water at risk. Let's not pretend the band was unaware this was happening over a period of years. Let's also not pretend that people from off reserve were sneaking onto that spot and dumping in the night. Those are sort of claims made by some people who refuse to attribute responsibility to the native bands, and those people who make those excuses are the problem. Band members and people off the reserve were both complicit. Nobody dared to intervene, though, because you don't dare question the authority of the band to deal with things itself. And I can lay out how this is going to unfold because we've seen this before. Despite demands from the provincial government, the band won't clean up the site. With the environmental damage being so extensive and immediate, the government's going to be forced to step in and clean it up for them. They'll then offer the bill to the band, which we'll, of course, ignore. Try and collect from a First Nations reserve. I wish you the best. In fact, some are going to justify this, say it's the fault of non-natives because they didn't stop it. Yeah, so we get in trouble when we intervene and we get in trouble when we don't. A similar incident unfolded in the 90s in Alberta on the Enoch Reserve. They'd been using dugouts for dump sites, and the Alberta government had to clean it up. The Cowichan tribe is now calling on the federal government to clean their mess up. And yeah, so we'll end up paying for it. In northern Alberta, another example, near the community of Conklin, a dump was so poorly maintained that a large bear population had moved in and dozens were shot over the years in the early 2000s. Activists blamed the provincial government rather than the nearby First Nation, which should have been responsible for that dump. Look, one of the most basic services provided by local governments, garbage collection and disposal. Every small town manages to do it, or people like me who live on acreages, we take our own trash to the proper municipal dump. On many reserves, however, garbage is rarely dealt with properly, whether at the household or government level, and is commonly strewn all over the place. That was part of what upset me with the Siksika band, or upset the band, I should say, when I shot a video from a public highway on their reserve. The garbage was appalling, and I exposed it. The band could find people who failed to dispose of trash properly, just as municipalities do, but that would involve taking responsibility and expecting it of their members. Let's get on to animal control. That's also a municipal responsibility. On reserves across Canada, feral dogs are often out of control. In fact, several children have been mauled to death by them on reserves. When feral dogs were coming into Calgary from the neighboring Sutina Reserve a few years back, Calgary's bylaw chief actually implied the feral dog issue was due to city people dumping them on the reserve. It was utterly absurd. Feral dogs are a problem on almost every reserve in Canada due to people living on them who refuse to spay and neuter their animals and letting them run loose. It's bad enough the bans refuse to enforce basic animal control, but for city officials in off-reserve communities to try and claim it isn't the responsibility of the reserve is beyond the pale. But it fits in with that usual approach of refusing to apply responsibility to reserves and the citizens on them, which perpetuates the problem. Animal rescue societies are swamped with reserve dogs, and from northern ones, don't think that city people are driving 12 hours to go dump their dogs somewhere. Charities are offering free spaying and neutering, but they can't keep up, and they won't until the reserves start taking responsibility. And let's talk drinking water. That's also a municipal responsibility. Thousands of municipalities across Canada manage to get clean water to their citizens every day. Meanwhile, we hear news of dozens of reserves under boil water advisories. The reserves are well funded to provide water to their citizens, but they mismanage the funds and don't properly maintain the system. So whose fault is it? Over 32 billion tax dollars go to the reserves every year. The failure to provide basic services isn't due to a lack of funding. Perhaps if reserves tax citizens to provide services as municipalities do, they'd feel more incentive to actually provide those services. Activists and Indigenous leaders like to pretend that the reserves are little sovereign states within Canada, but they're anything but. They're dependencies that won't even take care of the most basic of local needs. The reserve system itself will likely never succeed. It's based on racial apartheid and segregation. If there's ever going to be hope that reserves are to become socio-economically functional, though, it has to begin by embracing a sense of personal responsibility for their affairs. If there's authority without responsibility, they're going to fail. And I will finish, because I know I'm going to get the feedback, by saying, yes, some reserves don't have all these problems. They are the exception, though, rather than the rule. And things on most reserves are only going to get worse. All right, that's how to kick things off today. Let's check in with other news with Dave Nealer, our news editor. How's it going?
A banana plantation?
Oh, bananas, maybe pineapple?
I'm not sure.
No?
No, it's not. We're not going to get that kind of weather change in our lifetime.
Wow, well, I like to be an optimist. Mangoes?
Mangoes, yeah, that'll be different. Kiwi?
Yeah, of course, I could barely grow weeds in my place. I'm terrible at gardening, but I'll try.
Maybe we should just stick with bees.
Well, the bees are doing well, yes.
There you go. At least you can make honey, right?
Yes.
So really busy news day today, Corey, already. The city of Calgary has announced they're doing something that's not going to cause any controversy whatsoever. They're going to raise the Palestinian flag on November 30th.
Yeah, that should be a nice calm afternoon.
Calm afternoon. Get the riot police and the horses on standby. I don't know about you, Corey. I think City Hall, you can fly the city flag, the Canadian flag, and the provincial flag, but that's got to be it, right?
It's funny, and I was going to get onto that because there is a motion, I think, coming to the UCP convention floor that people said was an outlier, but where the municipalities would be directed. You know what? Just keep your flags at that. I think that would be a nice one. Just it's not impressing, just everybody. You can't pick and choose there. Nobody else has one.
There's no point making controversies when you don't have to.
No, we have plenty enough.
Speaking of controversies, the details have been leaked about Prime Minister Carney's next big 5 projects announcement, which he's doing tomorrow in Prince Rupert. None of them are pipelines, though, Corey. So, yikes. There is rumblings that there may be a memorandum of understanding, between the province and the feds on building a pipeline. But we're working to get some details from the Premier's office. But I would think if there's no pipeline, she's not going to be happy.
A memorandum of understanding is
not
just
worth
another promise, a piece of toilet paper.
Not worth the paper that it's written on. We've got a Liberal MP slamming his own party's budget. Nathan Erskine-Smith says it doesn't do what it should be doing. So, the Liberals are always talking about this dysfunctioning Conservative Party, and they've got people on their own that don't like what they're doing. New bombshell scandal today on Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. Emails released that said Donald, quote, knew all about the girls. So we'll see. This is sort of a scandal that just doesn't seem to want to go away with him.
Well, Trump invited it, right? I mean,
yeah.
I don't get it. He went and used the Epstein thing when he was not in power, of course, and kept twisting and pushing. And then suddenly once he's in there, don't worry, guys, look somewhere else. Well, sorry, Donald, you got to wear this too. It's an ugly scene to watch, a distraction from the serious politics.
Exactly. You obviously heard the big plan by the Canadian Armed Forces to enlist 300,000 bureaucrats.
Oh, yes.
This is sort of a dad's army type thing. Columnist John Thompson has written about that when he wasn't rolling over the floor laughing. I mean, How can you go from a CAR call taker in the morning to a warrior in the afternoon?
We can't even get them to leave their houses for more than 2 days a week to come into the office.
No, I know.
Just stick them on a battlefield. I mean, you'll see. The Army has changed. I mean, the positions aren't there. I'm sure there was probably a lot of applications for tail gunners, but modern equipment doesn't call for that role any longer.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who would be applying for a tail gunner job. That's
See how much trouble.
Today. Kenneth Green from the Fraser Institute has a column on David Eby, who comes across as an environmentalist, but Mr. Green says he's very far from that. And former Liberal MP Dan McTeague, who's now doing good work on gas prices, he's got a column out on the Liberals' green spending on EVs and all that sort of good stuff is leading Canada down a road to ruin. So busy day. Our David Winnick is just back from a Pierre Poilievre press conference, so we've got him responding to the pipeline announcement. So we'll have that up shortly.
Right on. Well, thanks. Yeah, lots on the go.
Can we show the head of our new reporter? Oh,
no, he was on a different show I did earlier. I did warn him, if you got a booger or something he's taken care of, you're in the spotlight now. So, but if he wants to outdo Dave, in the noodles.
Well, that's it should be William Vassar, who's going to be our new legislature correspondent in Edmonton. So branching out all over the place. Edmonton, Ottawa.
The Western Standard is spreading like a fungus.
A fungus.
Yeah, something better. I got to come up with a better analogy than that.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Well, I'll let you get back to that plethora of stories to cover. And
thank you, Corey.
After the show.
You bet.
Right on. That is our ever busy news editor, Dave Naylor. And yes, as you can see, lots of stories, national, local, international, even if we're going to bring up Trump. And the reason we've got Dave back there, these new reporters, these people spreading not so fungus-like, but into Edmonton and Ottawa and all over. We're going to have William Barclay on shortly to talk about that, is because you guys have been subscribing, and we really appreciate that. So check it out if you haven't subscribed yet, guys. It's like a newspaper subscription the old way, westernstandard.news/subscription. Get past that pesky paywall, and it helps us keep bringing that news to you and separates you from that tax-funded cesspool of legacy media. If you subscribed already, thank you very much. We really, really do appreciate it. You're holding things together for us. And if you haven't yet, come on, get on there. Hey, the Christmas season's coming up. You don't want to know what you should get that liberal uncle who drives you crazy? Buy him a subscription with the Standard for a year. Give him the card for that at Christmas over the dinner table. That'll make things excited over there, right? All right. Either way, yes, lots going on. I want to get back a bit to just the scope of the mess. This story isn't going to go away for a while. What's happening with the Cowichan tribes and that garbage dump that's going on over there? There's a Twitter, ex-personality, I guess you could say, Brittany. She posts by on there. If you're not familiar with it, Brattani, and she actually works driving, one of those massive mining style dump trucks, which moves a lot of dirt and everything. She's been kind of crunching the numbers with what we're hearing about that dump and what it would take to clean that up. Because I threw out some rough numbers because that's not my field of specialty, but I just looked, using Google and trying to look at the cost per yard of cleaning contaminated soil or moving it or whatnot. And it could work out to 400,000 tons of soil, which, going on the low end, disposing of contaminated soil is about $250 a ton. You're looking at $100 million. That is a big tab. And who's going to cover it? We know, unfortunately, the taxpayers. And that could go as high as $600 a ton. So it could be, much more than that. And people were wondering how and why this happened. This is where we need more investigation too, because we've had construction companies that were dumping there. Dumping is expensive. If you do demolition and so on, you have to pay to take those materials to a landfill. But if there was somebody offering, say on the Cowichan Reserve, saying, I'll charge you only half that with cash, well, they go there. Those construction companies should be looked into. But where? I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of tons of material, even at half price. Again, we're looking at millions and millions of dollars have been changing hands. That's why this individual felt compelled to pollute a giant area that he was maintaining on the reserve. And that's why, because again, if you look at the roads, you look at the maps, if you look on Google Maps, hundreds, if not thousands of dump trucks would have had to drive right past the Cowichan Band offices on the way to this illegal dump and dump their material. Let's not pretend they didn't know it was happening. So why didn't they do anything? Again, it has to be investigated. I won't point fingers. I don't feel like getting sued any more than I have to, but I suspect some people made some really good money out of that over some years, and now we got to pay to clean it up. So let's keep that story alive because, guys, I hate to say it, and I've been showing that on the videos I've posted when I've toured reserves. The Cowichan aren't unique with this, unfortunately. Maybe it might be the biggest. I sure hope it is. But there's issues going on everywhere. Okay, let's get on to my guest. I've been looking forward to this. We're expanding. We've got William Barclay out in Ottawa, out in the heart of the federal politics, and he's already been putting up great stories, and he's given us coverage from out there out east. So let's bring William in and have a conversation. Hey, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Mr. Morgan, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to meet you and be here with you today.
Yeah,
and,
great.
Yeah, like you're saying, I am the new parliamentary correspondent for you guys at Western Standard. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I guess your hardest part will just be picking and choosing. I mean, there's only so much you can cover, and there's so much going on over there. Finding the most important stuff to put into a story and share with us.
Oh my God, yeah. There's kind of like so much information, so much going on here, especially in Ottawa and the budget dropping and everything. One of the things that I found to be kind of funny with everything, just with regards to my coming on with you guys, is we actually have a very long history together. Long before, much long before Fox designated me as Canada's foremost young conservative voice, you guys actually published my very first op-ed ever for Young Voices. Actually, my very first interview because of that op-ed with you guys. So I just, we have a very long history together. I think I was actually interviewed on the Western Standards anniversary. So there's definitely some poetic entanglement at play,
Oh, well, awesome. Well, I'm glad it came full circle and we've got you on board, all the time now. I'm looking forward to your contributions. Your most recent one, I mean, we'll start with that kind of. Your last column was on military spending. And I mean, boy, there's a lot of money going in there trying to counter what's not been a lot of proper resources going into the military for a long time. Can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, well, actually, I would say that there hasn't been anywhere near enough money going into the military. So despite the fact that the Liberal government has very much enthusiastically designated billions of dollars for left-wing talking points and wasteful DI initiatives like the Department for Women and Gender Equity, WAGE, funny enough, the 2025 budget has failed to actually earnestly invest in the Canadian Armed Forces. I mean, this isn't really surprising, although it is disappointing, because for over a decade, the Liberal government has really forsaken the Canadian Armed Forces and permitted Canada's national security apparatus to erode and collapse spectacularly. Our forces suffer from a chronic lack of personnel and inadequate training. I think we actually have to rely on an army of public service right now, actually, to boost our ranks by 300,000, I think it is. Our military is always severely under-equipped and routinely forced to deploy decrepit military technology and equipment. I think it's 50% of our military equipment is actually unavailable and unserviceable, and only 58% of the military would actually be able to respond at all if NATO called on us for any help at all. I think actually the sum total of our military projection ambition now consists of only 3 frigates, 2 fighter jet squadrons, and 1 mechanized brigade. And I think this is probably worst of all. Under the auspices of the Liberal government, the Canadian Armed Forces has very much been forced to very much abandon Canada's proud military history and martial sentiment. I think the Canadian nation as a whole very much has been forced to divorce itself from the reality that long before the Canadian state was a peacekeeper and a steward for other nations, Canada was a peacemaker and renowned as one of the international community's most spectacular merchants of violence and loving severity. I think the problem for all of us, though, is that despite the Liberal government's attempts to shirk Canada's military history, national power and sovereignty have become a prerequisite for every state post-Trump. And I think all of us in Canada kind of have to confront the fact that this disturbing lack of military funding kind of forces this looming specter of a 51st state to become altogether too real.
So, I mean, part of this too is Mark Carney seems to be most concerned with his reputation in Europe. He's been very Eurocentric with a lot of his actions and just the way he is. One of his bigger embarrassments, I think, though getting raked over the coals, was Canada has been terribly short when it comes to fulfilling NATO commitments. I mean, whether people agree or not, we've committed to a certain amount. Is this civil service idea just more of a number juggling way to say, look, we've expanded our capability, and it's also a way maybe to keep some civil servants subsidized and happy? Because it's not, I can't see how this could turn into anything functional militarily, whether a peacemaker, peacekeeper, or heaven forbid, an actual wartime action.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think it was our previous Minister of National Defense said our military is on a death spiral. And I don't think the 300,000 public servants, however many, are going to fix that death spiral anytime soon. What we need is submarines, aircraft carriers. We need proper training. I think we only have one submarine. I think it was built in the 1980s to police our whole coast. And that's just simply unacceptable, especially to try to back it up with public servants. I think even with regards to the funding that's supposed to go towards the military in the budget, it's remained kind of vague. They haven't even really told us how much is supposed to be going there year by year. They just kind of said, we're going to give this much money to you guys eventually at some point. And that's simply not okay, especially for a country like Canada that, like I said, used to be at the vanguard of military, let's say, prominence on the international stage.
So something that's on your table now with your role over there, we've got the budget deliberations going on. It's a massive budget, a massive deficit budget. The question people are throwing out, I don't think it's going to happen, but we're watching the intrigue, the political play, and so on. Do you think this budget's going to pass?
I think that it'll ultimately lead to an election. I think that's what everybody's gearing up for. I think that is, in a way, what the majority of the parties and political actors want. But I think that it will ultimately lead to an election. I think, too, maybe the other thing that the budget has done is it's acted as a catalyst for a curious fracturing of not just the Conservative Party, but the Liberal Party as well. What we've seen, actually, is Mark Carney has quietly been forced to kind of back off on getting rid of the EV mandate. That actually, I think, is going to be sticking around in order to placate people within his own party, like Yobo. And we've actually seen Liberal MPs, I think it was Erskine, criticize the budget emphatically, simply because it failed to deliver, and it's placed debt, incredible debt, upon the shoulders of Canada's youth. And so I think that more than anything, what we're seeing with the budget is not just that it'll result in an election, but it has resulted in very much a fracturing of not just the Conservative Party, but all parties, I would wager.
So, I mean, yeah, the interesting thing with Erskine, the one Liberal voice kind of jumping out of the crowd, which is exceptional because they tend to keep a pretty tight ship, though he's coming at it from the left. He's not saying that they're spending too much or spending irresponsibly. He's concerned about, them cutting in areas like that's failing tree planting program or some green initiatives. But that kind of comes towards some of the stuff you sent in your abstract. The Liberal government has spent a long time oppressing the right-wing conservative values, and for Carney to try and pivot now to try and eat some of that voter base up or try to pretend that he can build the economy, this is the pushback. He's kind of getting into the soup of the Liberal Party's own making at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're bang on. I think that what we've seen is for over a decade, all right-wing ideology and politics have become oppressed in Canada. And what we've seen is that left-wing pundits and political actors are complicit in this. They very much deployed the term populism and populist as catch-all terms for all right-wing ideology and every conservative. And so they've erected almost this ecosystem, right, wherein every right-wing ideology is not merely a competing ethos, not the values are not merely a different perspective, but rather they're inherently evil and undemocratic, and therefore an enemy that has to be eradicated and destroyed along with its adherents. And so what we've seen in Canada is political discourse has collapsed, and open persecution has become a macabre reality almost for the daily life in the daily life of every conservative in Canada. In fact, politically motivated violence even now threatens to replace all dialogue and implode the Canadian state. I think most people in Canada now feel as though they inhabit something that's more akin to kind of this Hobbesian state of nature than any proper nation.
So getting to that, one of the things you're going to be able to give us a better perspective of being in Ottawa, a lot of what goes on too. I mean, we've got a conservative liberal split regionally across this country. That divide is pretty harsh, and it's difficult for conservative parties to win inroads in central Canada. But I mean, some of that interplay that's going on in Ottawa, is there much concern about the regionalism, the fracturing, the things that are going on, or are they still more focused on centralized power?
Well, I think, unfortunately, Ottawa is kind of a beast unto itself. I think they're focused on their own agenda. What I would say, though, is that the Democracy Index, one of the foremost indicators of, again, democracy in the world, has actually confirmed that tensions between the Liberal federal government and the Conservative-led provinces are now one of the biggest risks in Canada political stability in Canada. And this is specifically because the Liberal government has flagrantly abused and manipulated Canada's fundamental democratic processes in order to ignore the values of conservative Canadians and exclude right-wing needs from Canada's national trajectory.
So there's a lot of speculation then going on. I mean, I kind of to be honest, and it's good, we get those different views. I got a feeling they're going to squeak through with this budget. I mean, the Conservatives would love to win a government, but they don't really seem well placed to do it at this point. My prediction, though I could be wrong, I certainly have been before, is that a handful of Conservatives will get the flu on key votes, and those things will manage to slide by. But if it doesn't happen, if as you think we head into an election, what do you think? I mean, then it would probably be Liberal government manufactured. I mean, they'd be the ones who'd want it the most. They're kind of sitting pretty good right now. If they can look like they were pushed off of a good agenda and forced into an election, that's how they would play it. What do you think their strengths would be, or campaign platform going into an election less than a year after the last one?
Well, so I think that one of the things that we need to stay away from is this narrative that conservatism is somehow in decline in Canada. I think that the media and Liberal politicians have essentially constructed this narrative, especially post-election. And now certain Conservative politicians are becoming beholden to it and kind of bullied into fulfilling its prophecies. I think we've seen Jean Leroux retire recently and everything with Chris D'Entremont. But I think that this is all part of a greater attempted narrative push we've seen over the past few years. This attempt to kind of convince everyone that right-wing values, conservatism, religion are all dying out. And it's simply not true, especially amongst Canada's youth, and which is, for all intents and purposes, Canada's future. And that's kind of where I look for the election. I think that data indicates that if the last election were to have been decided by Canada's youth, actually, we would have been blessed with a Conservative government. And countless studies demonstrate that Conservative values are firmly on the uptick among Canada's youth. And in this era of rampant uncertainty, they aspire towards structure and objective value. And that is the hallmark of conservatism. I think more than anything, we need to, as the right, need to be careful not to inadvertently fall into this trap of reiterating that narrative that conservatism is in decline, because it's simply not true. But we do risk speaking it into existence. I think that's precisely what's happening kind of right in front of our eyes, even with this, so to speak, fracturing of the Conservative Party, with this narrative that the Conservatives have no hope in the next election, with this belief that regardless of what happens, we're looking at a Liberal government. I think that we need to, in a way, like I was saying, abandon and avoid speaking that into existence.
Yes, no, I mean, defeatism, of course, is going to be a self-perpetuating ideology if you take that on. The budget's kind of overwhelming everything right now, as it should, I guess. I mean, it's a massive thing, but we are in the middle of a parliamentary session. Are there some other bills or committee actions? These are the sort of things you're going to be, trying to keep your eyes open through, but they slide under the radar sometimes during budget time. Is there other stuff going on we should be watching?
Oh, what I'd be looking at right now actually is the major projects. I think what we've seen is that although Carney's spent a little bit of time kind of pantomiming that he's on it, that Danielle Smith is on the other line, and that there will be a pipeline eventually, I guess he's announcing them officially on Thursday, but the latest batch on his living list of major projects is kind of leaked, and there are no new oil pipelines on this list, right? And I think that that's really one of the things that I'd look at right now is this major projects office. It's supposed to be a living list. It's supposed to be something that's perpetually updated and dynamic. And so I would wager that anything that's going to be kind of slipped under the table, maybe not slipped under the table, but I think that this major projects office is really going to be the locus of a lot of controversy for the Liberal government going forward, especially with how much Carney is being over-promising and under-delivering, especially vis-a-vis oil pipelines.
Yeah, well, and it's funny. I was doing an interview with, I'll say it outright, with Rebel this morning, and something that was laid out that they've dug into, which is interesting. That major projects office they put supposedly in Calgary for the sake of optics. It turns out that 6 months later, whatever it's been since they announced it, they still don't even actually have an office yet. They've only got one employee and one person in charge of it, but they've got a budget of something like $20 million. So what on earth are they doing? I mean, just sounds like, okay, we've created this shell of an office, but in reality, everything's going to come through the Privy Council.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and again, that seems to be one of these hallmarks of the Carney government. Again, like all these Potemkin villages that appear to be something, and then they're really just almost vapor. And I think that he, again, is in a lot of ways worse than Justin Trudeau in a lot of ways. I think he's worse in terms of the globalism. I think he's worse in terms of Canada's future. And I think he's definitely worse in terms of being kind of the quintessential Liberal, wearing these rose-tinted glasses as champagne socialist, promising everything to Canadian people and really delivering nothing to them, really every dollar and cent going into his own coffers.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of things seem to a lot of roads lead to Brookfield, and I understand he's distanced himself from the management of that. But that's a difficult area though. When you are, to be fair, a little bit to Prime Minister Carney, when you've had a lot of financial interests, you recuse yourself from those when you go into government. And because his are so large and so extensive with large operations, I mean, even he may not be at fault with some of them that fall into government contracts or conflict, but he's always going to be accused. There's always going to be that taint if we see anything tied into Brookfield coming through the federal government. It's a mire he's going to have to deal with for his entire term.
Absolutely. I think that the way that he has sought to deal with it, though, it speaks volumes. He hasn't endeavored to be open and transparent, although he has used those words. Instead, he's tried to conceal things. And I think that he is very much like a walking conflict of interest is really the phrase that's bandied about. I think that he's engaged in an excess of lies since his term began. I think beginning with things like pretending to call off the tariffs and these kinds of things with Donald Trump, and things that just simply didn't happen.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to watch and a lot going on. It seems like it's this is the same stuff, different face in a sense. I'll not use the full analogy that tends to be a little more fecal. So before I let you go, I really appreciate you coming on. I guess you're going to pop on the pipeline with us a little later too. What else are you working on right now, and where can people find your work, not just with the Western Standard, but outside of it?
Yeah, so on the 16th and 17th, actually, what's next up for me is I'll be at the Toronto Democracy Forum at the University of Toronto presenting my essay, Canada's Right-Wing Response to a Decade of Liberal Oppression. If you guys want, you guys can find my work over on Twitter at Will Barclay, PCBG. That's where you find all my articles for Western Standard, elsewhere, all my media appearances, and we should have a homepage and a website up promptly. Thank you guys so much.
All right, excellent. Great to meet you, and looking forward to watching you covering Ottawa on our behalf, because I don't want to go over there and look at all that stuff. So thank you again. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
Great, thanks. So one more time, guys. Yeah, that's William Barclay. And yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot out of him. I mean, as you can hear there, he's got his finger on the pulse of all those things that are going on over there. Ottawa is, one of the things he mentioned, it's true. There's a different attitude there. They're introverted, they don't necessarily think outside of there. That's one of the things when I talk about regionalism, people get upset with Ottawa or Toronto, saying they don't like Westerners. Actually, guys, it's a lot worse than that. They rarely actually even think of us. We don't register on their scale of paying attention. And that's, I think, more hurtful in some ways than, them actually doing things detrimental to us. It's an indifference. And that was, I remember answering a question about that before with somebody who was saying, well, should we send more people as MPs? The way I see it is we're sending more good people to ruin them in Ottawa. The term used to be dome disease or Ottawashed. You look at members of parliament when they spend too much time in that world and how they come back. There's truth to it. That's part of with Jason Kenney. As I said, I really respected his work in the 90s, Taxpayers Federation, and then as a member of parliament with the Reform Party. He was a bulldog. He was repeatedly awarded kind of like the hardest worker in parliament. And after all that time, he came back, he came provincial, and you know what? He'd lost touch with the province and the people that he began with. He'd been in Ottawa too long. Smart man, dedicated man, but he'd really kind of forgotten why he began or what the connection was out here anyways. And that's why he couldn't maintain that. He did good work in getting the parties together, becoming premier, but really didn't get a grasp on what the citizens and the conservative citizens wanted out here. And ultimately it cost him his job. Yeah, we got all sorts of stuff going on. And as William pointed out, this has been coming up, and Dave mentioned that memorandum of understanding. I'm wondering when Premier Smith is going to take the claws out. She's been polite. She's kept talking about optimism. I think a lot of it's politics because she's no fool by any measure. And nothing's happening. I mean, she made 9 demands, getting up to 6 months ago. This is what we want to see from the government or else. But she never filled in after that or else. And that deadline is creeping up really fast now. The deadline, a nice optics, was Grey Cup Day. Well, that's coming up this weekend. The deadline is here. Where's the or else? Don't wave a memorandum of understanding and say, look, we got something by Grey Cup Day. That's crap. That's an IOU. It's not worth the paper it'll be written on. It's pointless. So let's see something. Because, yes, we're talking the big announcement, and it's been leaked, so we know there's no oil going. And the reason there's no oil, and that's the juggling act, and that's the disingenuous crap coming out of Carney, is, of course, they keep playing that saying, there's no private interest wants to invest. Of course there isn't. Who in their right mind would invest in developing oil in Alberta and trying to get it to the coast when we have a tanker ban? It's impossible to export it. Why would you invest in that? Or when we have Bill C-69, the anti-pipeline bill. Those have to go first. Those have to be stricken before a private company is going to say, you know what, I'll consider starting the process to get a pipeline out of Alberta to a coast. Because they've had the rug pulled on them too many times already. They know better. And hey, I know it's not just Canada. They built the Keystone right to the Alberta border, and then Biden yanked it out on them. We had Energy East, which again, they say, oh, well, the private interest to pull out because it wasn't financially feasible. That's true. But the reason it wasn't feasible was because the bloody government threw so many regulations on it, they ground it into the dust. I mean, I think it was TC Energy, but they lost a billion on that thing, just trying to get it done. And it never got off the ground. Trans Mountain, again, the Liberals like to rephrase it, or West, Eastern apologists saying, look what we gave the West, we gave them the Trans Mountain. I'll kiss my butt. We never asked you guys to build the Trans Mountain. We just wanted you to get out of the bloody way. That was an example of Trudeau overplaying his hand because he shut down the Northern Gateway, which would have been built by now. He shut down Energy East. And then Kinder Morgan, mired in all these regulations, spending billions, losing all that money. Finally, they said, you know what? We're out. We can't do this expansion. We're done. We're pulling out. And they realized, holy cow, we've overdone it because financially, I'm sure Trudeau didn't figure it out, but somebody smarter than him in his office said, we got to do something about this. Kinder Morgan wasn't coming back. So they spent 30-some billion tax dollars to build that when it could have been built years prior without a single tax dollar and privately at a cost of, I think the initial one was $4.5 billion, maybe $7 it moved up to. So we are not getting this pipeline. So then the ball is in Danielle Smith's court because that's what it is. It's back and forth, right? It's the things. She's been generous enough to say it's in the federal government's court for this long. Well, nothing's happened. And that was great with Sheila and Lise when I was on that interview when they broke it down and showed it with checking those numbers out from the Privy Council. How serious are they about this supposed big office? All that fanfare and opening it in Calgary. Calgary's downtown still has a vacancy rate of nearly 30%. It's not like they're having a hard time finding room down here because they drove out all the oil companies. We got lots of office space, guys. You haven't even opened an office. You haven't even hired multiple staff. This is supposed to be something that's managing the projects that are going to move billions, perhaps over time, supposedly, if you believe the hoopla, trillions of dollars in Canadian products all over the world for decades. They got one person assigned to it who has one assistant who presumably is working from home because they haven't even leased an office. 8-6, a commenter saying, where do we go from here? All roads lead to independence. Yes, that's where I see it. I've talked about that. I don't think Premier Smith should come out and say we need to move towards independence, but that's where I'm saying she should pull the trigger and say, okay, you know what? The referendum's on June 20 or something. I don't know. Set a date. Let's run it. Let's have the question. Let's have it out. A commenter, my 2 cents, 581 says as an option, Alberta can ship oil north to Alaska and move it out that way. Yes, but it would cost a fortune. Plus, we just can't get it up there even without a whole bunch of federal getting out of the bloody way. Plus, there's the same hazard with that you get it built to the edge and then suddenly a Democrat comes in and shuts down as they did with the Keystone. We need to get to a coast, absolutely. But we need to get it moving domestically. This is the only chance. This is it. This is what a federation is supposed to be for. This is why it isn't a unitary government, supposedly, in Canada. It's supposed to be 10 provinces, yet bound by an agreement, by a constitution saying we're going to work in each other's interests together because it makes it stronger as a federation. Part of that is a province is not supposed to be allowed to stop interprovincial infrastructure, highways, railways, pipelines. That's government, federal government authority. That's where a proper federal government should be stepping in, telling David Eby, too damn bad. It's not your authority. It's an interprovincial pipeline. It's going to go. We don't need memorandums of understanding. We don't need committees. Look, we are sitting on one of the largest oil deposits on Earth. The world wants it. They want it badly. Demand for oil and the products associated with it has only risen, despite the peak oil kook balls. Oh, we're going to run out of oil or people won't want it anymore. They've been telling us that since the 70s. I was in diapers when they were talking about peak oil. Look at me now. I'm gray. I'm late middle-aged. Peak. It'll peak one day, but it hasn't yet. And if it's going to peak, that means we should be digging it out and selling it as much as possible before it does. That means we got to get pipelines to the coast, Canadian coast. How do we do that? Again, the companies know that. They know there's demand. They know that they can move that product, but they need to know they can get it done. They need the tanker ban gone, and they need C-69 gone. Carney knows that too. He won't get rid of it. Well, yeah, the independence option then. Let's get on with it. Let's talk about it. Let's have that vote. What else we got going on out there? Yeah, that Dave talking about that. Flags at city halls. Let's just stop it. Let's just stop it. No flags. That's a motion put forward going to the I think it was Bonita. I'm not sure. But it's coming up from one of the constituencies going to the UCP convention. I think it's a very reasonable one. Let's just stop all this crap. Why should any municipality be worrying about flying the international flags or flags of lobby groups or anything whatsoever? Just stop it. Just stop it. The symbolism just divides people, infuriates people, a lot of people talk about when you talk about the Middle Eastern thing going on, it brings that conflict to our streets. People saying, I don't want to hear about either side of it. Okay. Well, why are we inviting flashpoints by civic governments taking sides and getting involved in it? Make it simple. National flag, provincial flag, and a city flag or municipal flag if they have one of that sort. And that's it. Nothing else for anybody else. Get over it. It's not an infringement of free expression. You can fly your flag wherever you want and whatever you want to do, just not on the property of a civic building. Because let's cut it out. It's not making things better. I've been talking since I got back from Israel and some of those things. There's a lot going on. We need some rational debate on it. Some of the stuff going on in the West Bank right now. And there's truth to that. Settlers in the West Bank, it's a complicated mess of an area. It's managed somewhat by the Palestinian Authority, managed somewhat by Israel, managed somewhat by third parties. And they're all somewhat living in that mess. In Gaza, it was just a walled-off city full of a terrorist farm, and we saw the worst possible outcome. But there are some extreme settlers, Jewish ones, Israeli ones, that are attacking other settlements in the West Bank. And it happened again. There was a big one yesterday. It's got to stop. This is not helping. This is giving ammunition to the anti-Israel bunch. Apparently, Israel responded quickly and did crack down and intervene on those settlers attacking the neighboring settlement out there in the West Bank. But they've been known to kind of get some selective blindness when those attacks were happening before. Let's have those talks. If we do want to see peace, we do want to see things resolved. We got to start talking about how we deal with that then. Maybe backing off some of those settlements in the West Bank, but, building bigger walls around Gaza. A lot more talk. But when we're doing stuff out here, like raising flags back and forth and screaming at each other and inviting the lunatics to spout out all our garbage and baloney about colonialism and all that crap, then nothing productive is happening here or over there. So yeah, everything starts at home, a little bit on our end as well. Whether we want to talk about those issues over there or not, it's they are going to impact us a bit. That's one of the things with Canada being a country that has people that came from all over the world that landed here. They do unfortunately bring some of their baggage with them, and they maintain some of that. They maintain feelings and ties to wherever they came from, whether it's Ireland, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's China. These things have to be addressed. I think in ways, if we do it right, it can make us stronger as a country. But if we allow those divisions and wars and fights from over there to come over here and we start fighting each other on the Canadian streets, well, we're not solving much of anything over there or here. But a beginning Stop raising bloody flags in city halls that don't belong. Why the hell should the Palestinian flag go up in Calgary at the city hall or Toronto at the city hall? It's just a flashpoint, and there's going to be problems that we invited, that we didn't need. Speaking of stupid problems, I'll leave off with yet another one, because we aren't hearing about justice reform from the Liberal government. They keep talking about it, but they aren't doing it. Another Gladue decision. The Gladue decision is a court thing where judges are instructed to basically give a lighter sentence to Indigenous offenders because, well, life's just been rough to them. And it doesn't make them any less dangerous. It doesn't help them get reformed. It just means they get out faster to reoffend and hurt somebody else. It doesn't work. I don't care about well-meaning policies. I care about outcomes. And the Gladue decisions are hurting people. This guy was a dangerous offender who had a flamethrower in his trunk. Yeah, he was already a convicted drug dealer, very dangerous man. The judge said, we're going to let you out without doing any more time because, yeah, we know you're dangerous. We know you'll probably kill somebody eventually, but you've suffered from intergenerational trauma. Yeah, there's going to be trauma when he kills somebody. He will. You don't carry a flamethrower around without being a problematic person. I don't care about the intergenerational trauma. The intergenerational crap has got to stop too. That's the excuse to keep this milking of wrongdoings that happened 100 years ago and claim that that's your excuse for failing in life today. Too damn bad. And you want trauma, you want people who are poorly treated, who didn't fall into that. Check out the Chinatown of any city in Canada. The Chinese were so abused 100 and some years ago in Canada, treated as second-class citizens, deported, all sorts of crap. And guess what? They're some of the most successful communities in this whole country today because they didn't mire themselves in victimhood. They just worked harder and made themselves better, and good on them. They deserve every dime they've earned. All right. That's enough ranting out of me today. Be sure to tune in to The Pipeline a little later tonight. Subscribe to our channels. We're expanding our shows. We're going to have more people coming on. Got a new guy over my shoulder. He didn't do anything embarrassing today. I'm bummed about that. I was hoping for something exciting. And yeah, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. We will see you next week again at this time.